Across the UK, the police are launching a full-scale crackdown on e-motos such as the Sur-Ron and Talarias. But is this about safety or control? So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what happens if you're caught riding one of these bikes illegally, what then happens to the bike and to the rider. So without further ado, let's get on the bike and jump straight into it. Now, if you're like me, you would have seen on social media tons and tons of posts about the police cracking down and capturing people riding illegal e-bikes such as Sur-Ron and Talarias. But when I read about these stories, there's one thing that really stands out to me, and that's the police are clamping down and seizing these bikes. But it does beg a question that as social media puts a spotlight on these bikes and makes them out to be so bad and so dangerous to the public, the question that I had to raise was, are these bikes as bad and as dangerous to the public as the media and the police are making out? And I'll run into why I'm asking that question, because I know a lot of people on here and the Karens are now going to jump on the comments and say, oh yeah, of course they are. People running around doing drugs and drug dealing and robbing phones. Yeah, I 100% agree. My social media feed is exactly the same as yours, and that's all I see. These bikes being used for crime. And yet there are people out there using them for crime, but they are also using every other mode of transport as well. It's not just these bikes. Now, most of these social media posts that I keep seeing all have the same common theme, and that is the fact that the police are seizing these bikes. There never really seems to be anything about any sort of prosecution to the rider or anything like that. And I just think if it was any other mode of transport, the driver or the rider would be prosecuted. So this is kind of what's raised this whole video really, and made me look into this even further. But let's take a real life situation. If you are riding around on an e-moto such as a Sur-Ron or Talaria and the police manage to catch you, then generally they will stop you, seize the bike under the Road Traffic Act 165, I believe, 1988. And the normal instances would be the fact that the bike is not registered for road use, you don't have valid MOT or insurance or the correct driving licence. Next up, what's going to happen is the police will call for recovery, and a recovery truck will turn up, put the bike on the back, and that bike will then be taken off and impounded. After that, the rider has 7 to 14 days to go to that impound and pay a fee to have the bike released back to them. Now, in most circumstances, you can only do this if you can provide the correct documentation, i.e. the V5 document for the bike, valid insurance, proof of ownership, that sort of thing. And in most cases, if you are being stopped and caught by the police for riding one of these bikes, the reason you are being stopped is because you don't have the correct documentation. So, in most cases, people can never retrieve their bikes once they have been impounded. So let's say that the rider obviously can't prove any of the documentation, he can't prove any ownership, and it's not road registered, he has no MOT or insurance. The situation will then go one of two ways. Either the bike will be crushed. Now, the other option, and this kind of baffles me a little bit, is the bike would go to a police auction. So the police stop someone for riding the bike illegally, they seize the bike, they then go ahead and resell the bike and put the bike back on the street for then potentially someone to go ahead and commit the same offences. Now, I'll let you guys decide in the comments whether you think that's right or wrong, but recycling illegal e-bikes. Now, the only real reason I can see why police would do this would be for financial gain. Now, I'm not saying the police are taking these bikes and making a ton of money off them, because as you know, with any auction, you're never going to pay market value, you're always going to pay a little bit less. And second-hand e-bikes from auction, you're probably looking somewhere from 1,000 to maybe 2,500. You've obviously then got other expenses involved as well, so the recovery company are going to want a piece of that for obviously recovering the bike, and then obviously impounding it is generally around sort of £20 a day to impound a bike. The auction company are going to want a little piece of that pie as well, so there's not going to be huge amounts of financial gain in there, but there is going to be financial gain there. Now, I'm not just making this up and coming out with this because this is what I think. This is all obviously research that I've done into what happens when bikes are confiscated by the police. And I personally do know people that have gone to these police auctions and bought e-bikes. So it is all out there. You can go and do your own research on it. So that's the bike taken care of. Rider's been caught. The bike's gone off. Whether it goes to auction or it goes to a scrapyard, But the next bit, and this is kind of going back to that point of what you're seeing on social media and hearing in the media, the bikes are dangerous, you know, we've taken these bikes off the road. Now, so the bike's been taken care of, it's either been crushed or it's gone to auction. But the next bit is kind of what I was talking about earlier, and that is the rider. What happens to the rider? And this is something you don't see on these social media posts. And I have researched this for hours and hours and hours. And there is barely any information or factual evidence for any of these riders have been prosecuted. So yeah, there is literally no information on what happens to the riders. Now, from personal experience, and the few people that I know that have had their bikes seized by the police, no criminal action was taken against them. And this is a few cases that I've known about. I've also spoke to other people within the community that have also had the bike seized by police. The bike was taken by the roadside and they were made to walk home. End of. No fines, no prosecution, no points on licence. And I'm sure there are people out there, and I'm, you know, please pop it in the comments if this has happened to you. But it seems to be that there's no further action being taken against the riders. I'm sure many of you are sat there thinking, well, you know, it's great, they've done a really great job, they've taken that bike off the road. And if you are caught riding one of these bikes illegally, fantastic. Yeah, okay, you get your bike taken off you, but that's the end of it. Probably one of the best outcomes you could wish for. So I tried to dig a little bit deeper just to find out how come these riders aren't being prosecuted, how come there is no more actions taken against them. And the research online, and I actually did manage to speak to a couple of officers about this. Now, they didn't want to be on camera for probably obvious reasons, but a couple of the main reasons why these people are not being prosecuted is the fact that, one, believe this or not, it is extremely hard for the police to prove that the bike they are riding is not compliant to the EAPC rules. The law is there in black and white stating the fact that if the motor is over 250 watts, if it's not pedal assist, if it has a throttle. So I was a little bit sort of confused about this, because if the police were to pull me over now, I don't have any pedals, I'm clearly using my throttle, and 99% of my rides I am going over 15.5 miles an hour. So I would genuinely have thought that that would have been a cut and dry case. There would be every reason that you would get prosecuted. But what they were saying is the police can't make these decisions. It then has to go to someone who is mechanically trained to identify the bike, the power output, and all the other things that come with it, to prove that the bike is not compliant. Now, okay, that's fair enough. Why wouldn't they just do that then? Because from everything I'm seeing on social media and the amount of bikes that they're seizing on a daily basis, surely they'll be prosecuting left, right and centre. But what they're saying is they don't have the funds or resources to be able to do it. They cannot afford to get a third party technician or someone trained in this area to be able to provide enough evidence to prosecute, which then is a whole nother argument in terms of what our government's doing with all this tax money, but we won't go into that. Now, the police officers also told me that even if they did have the funds to then be able to prove that the bike was not compliant, the actual prosecution part is extremely timely and extremely expensive. So for them to take a rider off the streets, the amount of paperwork that goes into them writing the reports, getting witness statements, having to go to court, the costs involved in all of that. Now, they physically told me that the quickest solution and the quickest fix to this problem is to seize the bike and crush it, get rid of it, get it off the streets. And why you're seeing so many local police forces posting this all over social media is they're hoping that it would be enough of a deterrent to stop people riding them illegally, because the amount of money that we spend on these bikes, you wouldn't want to run the risk of losing it. Now, if you talk to people within the community, I don't know whether it is deterring people or not, and I'm sure you're all going to have your own opinions on that. But yeah, what it basically boils down to is they're looking for the quickest, simplest, easiest option to remove the problem without draining the resources of police being off the streets, dealing with the reports and everything that comes with it, such as court. And the actual words that they said to me is there's not enough consolidated court rulings to guide prosecutors to get a full conviction. They also said there's a huge chance as well that if it was to go to court, that the police might actually lose the case. So all the resources and all the money and time spent could amount to absolutely nothing, and they're not willing to take that risk. Now, I do agree it's a valid argument by the police. It makes complete sense when resources are stretched and it's going to be hard to fund this. I do agree. Now, the other thing that I see all over social media and all on these posts is the fact that these bikes are dangerous. Now, I've said this before and I'll say it again, and I completely stand by it. These bikes are not dangerous. There's nothing dangerous about them. The fact is, it's the rider that makes it dangerous. If you're riding dangerously, that is the danger. It's like anything, isn't it? If the bike's sat in a garage or on a driveway, there's no danger to anyone. It's when it's being ridden, that is the danger. So literally after hours and hours and hours of research, I managed to find some stats. Now, this is e-bikes, so that'll probably range from anything from 250 watt right up to, Starkvargs and high-powered e-motos like Sur-Ron and Talaria. But in 2024, there was 80 reported incidents in the UK. Now, this is all out on the internet to go and find. Don't get me wrong, it is going to take you hours to do, because I had to go through each council, each local police website, Google searches, absolutely everything. It literally took me hours. And the magic number that basically everything kept pointing to was 80 reported incidences involving e-bikes. And 80 is a big number. 4 of those were classed as serious incidences. 4 out of 80 were classed as serious incidences. So that was my stat. I had 80 incidences. Now, it doesn't specify exactly what these incidences are, and it's more than likely not going to involve someone calling the police for someone riding around in a field or in a park or anything like that. That would be where members of public have physically been injured or hurt in any sort of way. But bear in mind, there was only 4 that were serious. So I was like, okay, so we took that number, and I thought I'd just have a little look into incidences involving other vehicles, such as cars, motorbikes, mopeds, stuff like that. And that number was an astonishing 130,000 incidences, of which 80,000 resulted in serious injury or death. Now, I know what the Karens are going to say in the comments. Oh, there's hundreds of thousands of cars on the road and hundreds of thousands of motorbikes, and there's only a couple of thousand e-bikes, so it's all relative. I totally agree. But the one thing I hate seeing on these posts and what people say in this general sort of consensus around these bikes is they're dangerous. Because you never hear on the radio, there's been an accident on the motorway due to this dangerous car or this dangerous lorry or dangerous motorbike. It's what happens in life. Someone might have been driving dangerously, 100%. Exactly the same with these bikes. But people are driving dangerously or riding dangerously. Totally agree, but there's just this massive stigma that e-bikes are dangerous and we must crush them and seize them and get rid of them, and let's not allow anybody to have one. And again, I know there's going to be people out there that turn around and say, register your bike for road use and you'll be absolutely fine. I'm 100% with you. I totally agree. I can see absolutely both sides of the argument. I guess for me, it's just what you see on these social media posts that I don't think they're quite telling the full story. But I just sometimes think that when you're seeing all of this on social media, it just warps the narrative and it warps people's minds into thinking that these are just really bad and really dangerous. They're not. They're absolutely amazing machines, economical, cheap, great for commuting. They're great for pleasure, just riding around like I am today. And I think for me, it's just a case of do your own research. Don't believe absolutely everything you're seeing online and on social media. But anyway, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. So go ahead and drop a comment below. If you've enjoyed this video, then please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It massively helps my videos, helps my channel. And if you haven't done already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And I will see you in the next one. Yes, sir. Take it easy.